Okay, the schutz of our learning should be a panacea. We're starting Yud Beis, Amud Beis.
What is that word you use?
Panacea? Yeah, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right.
What does it mean? What do you think it means?
It means a cure for everything. You know.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So we're starting. It's really in the middle of the page. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. The line starts Omer. So it's Yud Beis, it's 12b, right in the middle. Okay. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Apananami Tanina. So let me go back for just 1 second. We had a machlekes here between Rebbe, that's Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, and Rebbe Elazar bar Shimon. The machlekes is about the gartel of the kain hedyet. Rebbe said that the belt, it's called the avneit. The avneit of the kain hedyet was shatnez, and Rebbe Elazar bar Shimon said no, it was linen. According to Rebbe Elazar bar Shimon, that was exactly the belt that he wore on Yom Kippur. And according to the Kohen Gadol wore on Yom Kippur. And according to Rebbe, that was the belt that the Kohen Gadol wore the whole year. Okay? So, we have this also in a Mishnah. Sounds like a Mishnah. Let's look at Manchaf Gimel. Panina is usually a Mishnah. But I don't see it as a Mishnah. I guess it's a Brisa. So I would say we have it in a Brisa. It says Al Basari. Okay, what we're talking about here is the Truma Sadeshin. Every morning the Kohen would take out a shovelful of ashes and they'd put it on the side of the Mizbeach. So we say this in the Kavanas. We say V'lava Shakayin Midayvad. That means his ksainas. Umichnesebad in his pants. Umichnesebad Yilbash al Basari. And he puts on the pants. So it says V'lavash, that he should wear. And then it says, what does he wear? He wears the midayvad, that's a tunic. And then umichnesebad, and then the pants he should wear. So it says twice wear. Didn't have to say that. It says al basarei matam lemi yilbash. Why does it have to say yilbash? So that he should wear. It already said v'lava shakayin. So lahavi mitznefes v'avnit larama sadeshin div Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that this is coming to tell me that he has to wear the hat and the gartel when he's taking off the Truma Sadeshin, because the pasuk left it out. The pasuk just says he wears the ksainas and the pants. It doesn't say the hat and the gartel. There's 4 garments, right? That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rabbi Yehuda's not Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. It's Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Loi usually. Rab Daisa Aimer. Rab Daisa says lahavi bigdei kayin gadol b'yem kippurim shem kshem l'kayin hedi. It's going to teach me a chiddush. That when it says that the Kohen Gadol takes off the clothing that he wore inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, he takes them off, and he puts them down. So Reb Daisa says when it says he puts them down, that doesn't mean that they need to go into Shemus. They need to be buried or something. It means that he's not allowed to wear them again, but a Kohen Hedyet is allowed to pick them up and wear them. Yeah, it's the goodwill of the Beis Hamikdash that he can he reuses those clothing. Now Rebbe responds to Reb Daisa. Rebbe says, Rebbe, I'm a state chuvas bedavar. He says, I don't accept what you're saying. There's 2 problems. First of all, you're missing the gartel, because even though the Kohen Gadol wore a linen gartel on Yom Kippur when he goes inside, but that's the wrong gartel for the Kohen Hedyet. See, Rebbe holds that the Kohen Hedyet has a gartel of shatnez. This is Reb Nachman bar Yitzchak telling us he has a raya that Rebbe is the one that holds that it's shatnez. Right, and then there's another issue Rebbe brings up with Reb Daisa. Look at what's happening here. It's going down in level. He used it, Kain Gadol wore it on Yom Kippur, and now a Kain Hedit wears it for a regular day. So Rebbe has, so what are you going to do with Yilbash? Well, you could really learn like Rabbi Yehuda, that says that you have to wear mitznefes, but he doesn't. He says Yilbash, the Rabbi says Lashchakim. It's coming to tell us that you're allowed to wear worn out clothing. In other words, even though it can't be torn, it can't be torn or tattered, but it's allowed to be worn down. Yeah, that's okay. That's acceptable. That's what we're learning from this. What would they say? Tzurisin of a rain. That's what they would say. In Europe, they would say you're allowed to wear torn clothing, but it has to be clean. Because they, they're poor, so but it wasn't an excuse to be dirty. So yeah, here it's not allowed to be torn; it's allowed to be worn, but yeah, it can't be torn; it can be worn. Vaz the Reb Daisa l'tamei. Reb Daisa follows his opinion. The Tanya Reb Daisa taught v'nicham sham when it says, but that when he exits the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The pasuk tells us, where's the pasuk? We're going to see it in a minute, I think. He removes the linen clothing that he wore when he came into the holies, and he puts them down. What does that mean? He puts them down. The first opinion says that it needs to be buried. Geniza, it's shameless. That you can't use it for another Yom Kippur. However, a Kohen Hedit is allowed to pick them up and wear them. Okay, Taner Rabbana. The Gemara has a question, a very interesting question. It says, "Ira by psul uminach etachta rishon chayzel avedasei sheni kol mitzvah gedola alav divrei Rav Meir. Rabbi Yosef rishon chayzel avedasei sheni and loyal kain gadol loyal kain hedit." It's a great discussion. What happens over here? If the kain gadol became pasul, so they had a second kain gadol designated to take him over. Okay, great. Now, what happens after Yom Kippur? So the first kain gadol isn't reinstated, and what does the second kain gadol, this new kain gadol, what does he do? So it's a machlekes Reb Meir and Reb Yaisi. Reb Meir holds that the second kain gadol has all the laws of a kain gadol. Once he acted as a kain gadol, he has all the laws. Now, what does that mean? The first kain gadol for sure goes back. He just became tummy for one day. It's fine. He became tummy. So he missed that opportunity, whatever. But there's no problem. He goes back the next day. The following day is a kain gadol. He goes to the mikveh. But what happens to the second kain gadol? So Reb Meir says he becomes another kain gadol, and he has all the laws. If he goes into the Beis Hamikdash, he has to be wearing the 8 garments. He has the laws that he can't become tamei to a relative, just like a kain gadol, even to a relative. Yeah, we'll see in a moment. Then what else? He can't marry an almana. Can't marry a widow. He gets all the stringencies of a kain gadol. A regular kain can't marry a divorcee. But a widow, yes. A kain gadol can't marry a widow. So this fellow now has all those stringencies. He never became tamei. So, yeah. Right. Well, they would have another kain there just in case he did. Why? Because you have another kain that's there. Oh, well. The miracle was that they never had to do that. Right. Right.
Given all this, why didn't, if the something happened on Yom Kippur, why didn't just the Sagan step in and do it? Why do we have all this discussion about appointing somebody new?
Well, the person that doesn't needs to be the replacement of Aaron a Kayan.
Right.
Gabriel Aaron. This is the job of the Kayan Gadol, the service of Yom Kippur.
No, I understand, but this came to my mind yesterday when we were doing Pirkei Avos. We're reading Rabbi Kanina
Right.
and Kohanim, and he was the Saging Kohen Gadol for decades, a long time.
Uh-huh.
I've read. So it must have been that, at some point he went through so many Kohanim Gadolim when he wasn't promoted, that somebody became Tame or got a physical blemish. He had to step in for a day. And so all these stringencies applied to him the rest of his life. Why wasn't he just the nominee to step in if the Kohen Gadol died?
Well, the only time he would step in as a Kohen Gadol would be if this happened on Yom Kippur. And probably the one that they appointed instead of the Kohen Gadol would be the Sagan. I assume that the Sagan was the person that was appointed.
Here's the one.
Yeah. So, but it never happened. Like Av Nosson is saying, if the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos tells us that he never became apostle on Yom Kippur, he never became Tameh. So why are we asking the question over here? That's Av Nosson's question.
Give Avram Nosson a trophy.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. Are all those miracles all the way through the Bayis Sheni?
Well, he was the Kohen Gadol for much of the period we've been discussing.
Who was?
Hanina. He was in the Bayit
He was
Sheni.
Gan Kayan and became the Kohen Gadol afterwards?
No, he was the Sagan Kohen
Gan, okay.
during the Bayit Sheni,
Right.
and afterwards he was still alive.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to see it's not so simple. We'll see here a story. You'll see it's not so simple. I don't think that it lasted all the way through the Bayis Sheni.
Don't we know that in the later years
Things went bad. Right. Yeah. 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 He would die in the thing. Uh-huh. So it goes like this. That Ruiz learned Reb Meir's opinion that he goes in and he's once he takes over, he remains a Kohen Gadol. And Rabbi Yossi says, Rishon Chayzer Lavidas, you're right. The first one goes back, is reinstated as the Kohen Gadol. What about the second one? Second one, Shena Eneroi Leila Kohen Gadol Leila Kohen Hediyot, becomes nothing. He can't be a Kohen Hediyot again. Why not? He already used the 8 garments. He can't go down. But he's not a Kohen Gadol. Amar Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, Maisa be Yosef ben Alam, supposed to be Mitzipari. There's a story of Yosef ben Alam from Tzipari Shir by Psol Kohen Gadol. They became something went wrong with the Kohen Gadol. And Manu Tachta, I saw in the note in the Steinsaltz that Josephus brings that it was actually Matisyahu Kohen Gadol that became Pasul. And they appointed Yosef ben Alam, who was also a Kohen. He was from Tzipari. And they appointed him. Okay. V'amr Chachamim, and the sages then said, Rishon Chayzel Avedasei, that the first one goes back. That would be Matisyahu, according to Josephus. And Sheni, Ein Yerai Leila Kohen Gadol Leila Kohen Hediyot. And Yosef ben Alam is can't do anything. He's not a Kohen Gadol. He's not a Kohen Hediyot. Kohen Gadol Misham Eva is what Yoel brought up. How can you have two Kohen Gadols there? There's going to be hatred. What is the hatred? He's going to be waiting for his friend, the other Kohen, to pass away. Right? Oh, this is like the life insurance that they would buy. Used to be able to buy for someone else life insurance, but then that wasn't a good idea because when he died, the other fellow made the money, so that wasn't the higher hitman. Okay, so here he's going to become the Kohen Gadol when the other guy dies. That's not a good idea. So Kohen Hediyot Mishamalam Makedesh Leimeridin, but he can't be a Kohen Hediyot because because of Malam Bakodesh. He was already Kain Gadol. He can't go down. Okay, that's Rabbi Yossi's opinion. Amar Rabba Bar Bechana, Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Rabba Bar Bechana says the name of Rabbi Yechanan, halacha ke Rabbi Yossi. The halacha is like Rabbi Yossi, that he's in this limbo state. He's not a Kain Gadol. He's not a Kain Hedyot. The halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. Tosfos over here says, why does the Gemara need to paskin? Hilchos Olam Mashiach. We don't have to paskin about things that when Mashiach comes. Tosfos gives several answers. One of the answers is that it's relevant to other situations as well. If someone gets instated as the Nasi, like for example, Rabbi Gamliel lost the position temporarily. They gave it to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, remember? Rabbi Gamliel with his argument with Rabbi Yeshua. So afterwards, when Rabbi Gamliel apologized, they put him back in. And Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was still there for 1 week out of the month. Shabbos Shalmi. I mean, which week is it? Is it Rabbi Gamliel's week?
What kind of was that? Which one was the one that was?
Rabbi Gamliel was originally, and then they put him back in for 3 weeks.
He did something wrong when he argued. It was like granting a punishment.
Right. Then he comes back in. Okay, so Tosfos says so it's relevant for other things, but then Tosfos says that it's really not a problem for us to paskin Hilchos Olam Mashiach. It was just that story, when that question, Hilchos Olam Mashiach, you're asking a halacha about what's going to be when Mashiach comes. That's only Rabbi Yosef that's bothered by that question. The rest of the Shas is not bothered by that question. And I've seen essays on this. Why Rabbi Yosef specifically? He was blind. He had something. There's a discussion that it's just a question by the Rabbi Yosef Amira. Okay, Umayda Rabbi Yossi, not Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi is a Tana. Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta. Umayda Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi agrees. Shem Avar va'Ava Davidas Ksheira. Even though Rabbi Yossi says that he shouldn't be a Kain Gadol, shouldn't be a Kain Hedyot. So, but nevertheless, if he does the job of a Kain Gadol, it's kosher. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Yehuda says the name of Rav, halacha ke Rabbi Yossi. The halacha was like Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi agrees that if the first Kain Gadol dies, that the second Kain Gadol, the replacement, steps in. It's the vice president. He steps into the position. The Gemara says Pshita. That's obvious. The Gemara says maybe we'll say that he's going to hate him. Tzara is the competition. The rival while he's alive. If we say that if he knows that he's going to step in after the first Kain passes away, the first Kain Gadol passes away, then maybe he's going to hate him and mistreat him. He's going to want him to die. So Kamash Milan, we don't have that concern. Okay.
Why do we have a concern?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because they're used to fulfill people.
Yeah. Okay. Yitzi's here. With pictures. I guess if you come in person, there's treats. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Eimer. Is there any fishes around? Yeah. Rabbi Yehuda Eimer, Api Shacheres Maskinai. Rabbi Yehuda says that they would put a second wife for him just in case his first wife passed away. Thank you. First wife passed away, so they would have a second wife because the Kain Gadol needs to be married. Okay. The Gemara asks, Rabbanan Nami Cheshinan Lashema. So the Rabbanan tell him back. The Rabbanan tell him back that Ein L'Davar Soif. Yeah, we're going to say over here what's the details. Yeah, all of those questions. So the Rabbanan said that that you can't suspect that. There's an endless. How do you know what's going to happen? If you're going to suspect everything, then a wife for a wife and another wife just in case that one and that. So okay. But the Rabbanan said that you designate another kain gadol. So why don't they suspect to the wife?
That case, where one of the Kayanim, right? It was a time it was extreme poverty. So he married like all the women down so he could feed them. He said friends on not sure as well.
No such a thing.
So like with the Kayan Gadol, why he said like 5 wives.
We'll see in a minute. The kain gadol is only allowed to have one wife. So there's a problem with this designation because he can't really be married to her. Let's see. So Amri Lach Rabbanan Tuma Shchicha Mislei Shchicha. The Rabbanan respond that we're concerned about Tuma because that can happen. But that's not as common. That's not as common as Tuma.
Wouldn't he be wanting his wife's side, so wouldn't he be able to marry
The Gemara is going to ask that as well. You see. Similar to that, I was going to ask. Okay, Amalai Imkain in Ladavar Saif. Ham said that if you're going to worry about the death of the wife, in Ladavar Saif. Where says Shapri Kam Leila Rabbi Huda. They gave a good response to Rabbi Huda. Beautiful. Rabbi Yehuda would say to you, Misa, Lemisa, the Chada Cheshina, Lemisa, the Tarti Lai Cheshina. Rabbi Yehuda would respond, one death we suspect, but not two, right? You don't have a vice president, right? One death. Rabbanan, what do the Rabbanan say? The train Cheshina. If you're going to suspect to death, then you should have to suspect to two. Why don't the Rabbanan talk to themselves? That means if you suspect to one tumah, then you suspect to two tumas. Yeah. So the Rabbanan designate another kain gadol, and they're the ones that say that if you're going to suspect to one to it once, you suspect to it twice. So why do they only have one kain gadol that's designated, a new kain gadol? Just have 2, 3, 4. Ain't let davar say. Amilach Rabbanan Kain Gadol Zarasu. The Rabbanan say that the Kain Gadol is very careful and it's not going to happen. So if he's so careful, so why do they have another Kain Gadol over there? If you think it's not a problem, they're designating another Kain Gadol. The Gemara explains, Kivan Davdinan Leitzara Koshkin the Misdaris Tvei. No, we have another Kain Gadol there to make him even more careful. Here, it's not the second kain gadol is there not because in case he becomes tamei, it's to make sure that he doesn't become tamei. You better not become tamei. We have someone else here.
You're gonna have to marry her.
We have another kain gadol here that's waiting to take the job. Okay. Thank you. Right. Umisagile betakanta, and is this solution going to help? Beisayam Rachmana, v'hachlav beisayu. What's Rabbi Yehuda trying to do? Rabbi Yehuda says that we need to designate another woman for him to get married. So the problem is that the pasuk says b'chiper badei bad beisay, that he has to atone for his family. Now, his family means he has to have a wife. Now, if the wife passes away, he's going to be left without a wife. So you designated another one, but he's not married to her. Just because they went on a shidduch, doesn't mean that they're married. They're not married. So how's it going to help? So the Gemara answers the Makadashla. No, he gives her a ring. He gives her a kedushin. It says but that. The ring isn't the marriage. There's two parts to the marriage. There's kedushin and the suin. He has to bring her into the house. He has to consummate the marriage. He didn't consummate the marriage. It says no. The kanisla. He married her. They did the suin as well. It was the full marriage. In Cain, havalish batim. Okay, now you're in trouble. Now you have two wives. He's a Kohen Gadol who's only allowed to have one wife. The Gemara answers that he divorced her. If he divorced her, then we're back to the original problem. He's not married. Okay, so Rashi mentions over here, just to calm us down, Rashi says, what's going on over here is that there's many questions that you can ask on each one of these, but we're just going through one. We're just going through a discussion just to weed out every possibility. And Rashi is basically saying, don't tackle us on every point over here. We're going to go through an interesting discussion of possibilities of how this is going to work, the second line.
The actual halacha is different second word or no?
We don't go like Rabbi Yehuda. It doesn't have. We're just saying, what was Rabbi Yehuda thinking? Like, how is it going to work? The Gemara says, "Lo tzricha the megar shlo al tanai." He made a condition in the divorce. The Amala, he says to her, "Harei ze gitech al manas shetamusi." This is your get on condition that you die. So if she dies, then she's divorced. 1 second. But maybe she won't die. What do you gain by this? So that's like a ridiculous, right? How does that work?
Is this only apply for Yom Kippur? You can't have two wives?
Yeah, it's just for Yom Kippur.
So why can't you have a divorce then if she doesn't die, she gets divorced from Yom Kippur?
Oh, so we'll see. The Gemara is going to suggest, yeah. The Gemara says, no, it's exactly the opposite. He makes a condition with her that this is your get if you don't die. If she doesn't die, then this is her get. The Gemara says, so how would this work? If she doesn't die, she's divorced. And if she does die, then I have the other one. The Gemara says, you're not resolving the issue because he gives one of them a divorce. He tells her that if she doesn't die, she's divorced. So she doesn't die, and the other one doesn't die either. And now, let's say if she doesn't die, then she's divorced, and then the first wife is there, which is great, no problem. But if the first wife dies, if this wife does die, the new wife dies, second one. So or even if she doesn't die. Let's say she doesn't die. If she doesn't die, she is divorced. But let's say the first wife dies, so exactly what we were concerned of, that the first wife is going to die, and the second wife didn't die, and she's divorced. So he's left without a wife. The first one died, and the second one, he becomes a widower, and a divorcee, and right?
Yeah, but wouldn't it still be the problem of mourning and doing Yom Kippur?
Yeah, we'll say that in a moment also. What's going to be in the middle? Okay. Ella, the Amar La, he says, Al Menashe Tamas Achas Mikem. This is going to be your get if one of you dies. Misa, let's say one dies. So Hakai Mahach. So the other one is still there. Mesa Hach, if the other one dies. Hakai Mahach. Then this one is there. That's a problem. That's going to be a problem. So the divorce is going to take effect. If one of them dies, so the problem is if one dies, then the other one gets divorced. So then he's left with nothing. I don't know how that's going to work. Yeah, Taisus asked this question. But the Gemara has another question. Taisus says. So that question is also there. But the problem with this is, let's say no one dies, so then she's not divorced, and the first wife is still there as well. And now two houses, so that's not allowed. Is such a get actually effective? We usually don't have a get that's conditional on herself. What's the problem with that? A get that's conditional on herself is she may, if there's a get that's given on condition, she may end up violating the condition, and then the get retroactively never took effect. Meanwhile, she was married, or whatever. So we don't want to have a get that she was remarried to someone else. She takes the get, but she's not really. There's still a condition that's lingering over this get. She says, "Oh, I'm a divorce. Look, I have a get. I'm divorced." Meanwhile, she later on violates the condition, and she becomes not divorced. So okay. So the oitia gavnim yavigita is such a thing a get. Rava says, here's your get, but you're never allowed to drink wine, not during my life and not during your life. It's not divorce. Because there's a condition. The problem over here is ain't creases, because she's still attached to her husband. The husband is like this controlling fellow that wants control over her even after she's divorced. She doesn't want her. If you want to be divorced, then you can't drink wine. So they're not really separated in that case. But if he says, here's your get, on condition that you don't drink wine all the life of so and so, now of someone else. Now, if that's the case, then that person may pass away, and then she's going to be she's still alive and he's still alive, and there's actually a real get there because she did not drink wine during that fellow's lifetime. It's not on her. It's not her whole life. There is a time when it will actually take effect when the guy dies. If it's up to her, if it's on her life, then it's never going to take effect. So the Gemara says like this.
What if like the whole thing with wine, right? What if it's something that's like a technicality, but you wouldn't even see it, right? Like let's say he said you're not allowed to drink wine till your son dies.
Yeah, so if it would be someone else. So if that child or whatever dies, so then the divorce would take effect at that point, right? So here what we're going to say is that this is your get on condition that the other wife doesn't die. So if that one is alive, then this is your get. That's going to work, right? So if the friend doesn't die, then she's divorced. That's going to work. This is Yoalasis. Maybe the friend is going to die in middle of the Avodah. So the get's going to take effect. It's not going to take effect at all. It's going to be retroactive. The Gita Dahai Lav Gita, who this woman was never divorced. The second wife is not divorced. And the first wife was alive for the beginning of the Avodah. The beginning of the Avodah that day was done with two spouses, two wives. So it's a problem.
What is the current girl that's coming like was doing like that?
Oh, so then
use the backup?
Yeah, then they would just use the backup.
Use the backup now. The chances are the first wife the second wife was doing divorce.
No. The second wife is only going to be divorced if the first wife doesn't die.
But when does that happen?
That divorce is going to take effect. That divorce is going to take effect. Yeah, once it's done. Now, 1 second. It's going to retroactively take effect. The problem is here is that the divorce doesn't take effect at all because she died. Now he needs to be married, so he's married to her. But the death has no retroactive factor in there. You follow? The divorce can have a retroactive factor, that he can go back and he's divorced from before. But the death is from midday. We don't say that, oh, it tells us that she was dead from before. It doesn't work like that. So the beginning of the Avodah, he had 2 wives. So Ela da Amala Hareza Gita Chalmanasha Thomas Chaverta. This is your divorce, he's telling her, on condition that she does die. That's not going to work. If she dies, then you're divorced. We're trying to resolve a problem here. Maybe she's going to die in the middle of the day. And then the beginning of the Avodah, he had 2 wives. So we're saying that now, okay, so if she does die, then the get should take effect. But then she died, the get takes effect. Now he doesn't have any wife. He divorces both of them. One of them, he says, this is on condition that your friend doesn't die. He says like this. This is on condition that your friend, this is your get on condition that your friend doesn't die. Okay. If the friend dies, then they're not divorced. If the friend doesn't die, then if she dies, then she is divorced. That means that the beginning, we're resolving here the beginning of the Avodah. She died in the middle of Yom Kippur. So we have to get rid of the second wife. Right? So if she dies, then it takes effect. However, let's say the first wife doesn't die. Then we have to get rid of the second wife. So what we tell her is that on condition that you don't go into a shul. So she doesn't go to shul. So then if she doesn't go to shul, then she's automatically divorced. So we got rid of the second wife by telling her, if you don't go to shul, then your divorce takes effect. We get rid of the first one by telling that she's divorced. Well, either one. She's divorced if the other one doesn't die. If the other one dies, then she's divorced. So the Gemara says now, 1 second. Maybe the friend won't die. Let's say that was for the first wife. The first one dies, then the second one gets divorced. But the first one didn't die. So the second one is still there. And she happens not to go into the shul. So now she didn't go into the shul, so she's divorced. And the first one is divorced also because the second one didn't die. Or the second one was divorced because the first one didn't die.
Someone's getting system up.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Gemara says, Ella, rather we have to switch this around. One of them, he says, this is your get on condition that your friend doesn't die. Okay. So the second one is going to get divorced if the first one survives the holiday.
Isn't the whole problem that she was financed for that after?
No, but it could be retroactive. The divorce could take place retroactively. So if after the holiday, the friend survived the whole holiday, so the second one's divorced. Now, retroactively. The problem is, Ulachada Amar, the other one he says, Hareza Gitech, Almanas She'ikanes Anila Beis HaKnesses. This is your get on condition that I go into shul. The Maisaha, if one of them dies, Kaimaha, the other one is still there. Right? We said it's only a get on condition that she doesn't die. But it's a get if she doesn't die. If she dies, then it's not a get. So good. if she dies, so he has another wife. The Maisaha, but if the other one dies,
According to other opinions, this is going to be Rabbi Yehuda. If his wife dies, he gets put another grandmother. It's decent.
if his wife dies, what would we do?
He would really face her.
Maybe, I'm not sure. Could be they can get him married on Yom Kippur also. The Gemara is not suggesting that here. I don't know why not. The Gemara is trying to figure out how to work this according to Rabbi Yehuda. That what was he trying to accomplish before Yom Kippur with designating this wife? So the Gemara says, "Maya Kalamemer." What is the concern now? Dilma Maisa Chaverta Bepalga Davaida. That was our big concern. Maybe one of them is going to die in the middle of the service. Now, if one of them dies and the other one, the get doesn't take effect, right? So then what's going to happen now is that he was married 1.5 wives, right? Over Yom Kippur. The second one is not divorced because the first one died. The divorce would only take effect on the second one if the first one survived. So the second one is fully married, and the first one only died in the middle of the day. That means the beginning of the holiday, the beginning of Yom Kippur, there were 2 wives. That was our original problem. And that we have this concern. So ichazi the kabay lememas kadamayel iyo ba'ayel beknesses amashu legita da gitel mafreya. Oh, that's not a problem. He sees that the first wife is dying, so he runs to shul, makes the get effective. So the first one he's divorced. So divorced the mafreya. It goes back. So he wasn't married to her even before. And then the second one, the get doesn't take effect. He's married to the second one.
If he wasn't even married to her before, does she have like the status of divorce?
Yeah, then she just becomes a divorcee. Well, she's passing away, so she dies.
And I'm thinking the second one. You said the second one,
The
right?
second
The
one,
first one doesn't die. Retroactively, she gets divorced.
no, the first one, he says, let's set it up like this. First one, he says, here's your get on condition that on condition that I go into shul. Now, if he doesn't go into shul, she's not divorced.
The first one?
That's the first one. The second one, he says, here's your get on the condition that the first one doesn't die. Okay, so the first one is now dying in the middle of the day. That means the second one, the get is invalid. So that means they're going to remain married. The first one is about to die, and he didn't go into shul, so she's not divorced. So the whole problem here is that he has one full wife, second wife, and he has his first wife was alive for half the day. So he had 2 batim, he had 2 houses, 2 wives for the at the beginning of the service. So what he does is he quickly runs into shul before she passes away to make the get effective on the first one retroactively, and then the second one remains married. Okay. Maskevla Ravasi. Ravasi says, "Vitema Ravavira elamiyata shtei yavamis abayis mi bayis echad le'yisiyavma." He goes back. He asks on the whole concept here. He says, "You said that bias, rechipar badvei about beisei, means that you can only have one wife. Turns out that the word bias is also used by a yavama. It says by the chalitza, that the fellow, the brother, doesn't want to do asher le'yivne beis espeis acher, the house of his brother. He doesn't want to build the house of his brother. He doesn't want to do yivim. Now it says beis acher. There's the word bias there. If that's the case, then what's going to come out is that if the fellow that's passing away has more than one wife, then there's no concept of yivim. Someone has 2 wives. Is only the mitzvah of yibam would only apply to one wife. But if there's more than one wife, then there's no yibam. The Gemara says no, yivamta riba. It says in the pasuk yivamta an extra time, And that's telling us that even if he has more than one wife, you still do Yibam. So Maskif la Ravina Vitema Rav Sharvia. Elamayata Rusalaitis Yabe. It says basic. Basic means that he's fully married to her. Let's say he was only betrothed to the woman, and then he passed away. So we learn that there is a mitzvah of Yibam. But according to this, that his bias means that he has to be married fully. So then Yibam won't apply to an arusa, to a betrothed woman, only a fully married woman. The Gemara says no, hachutza. The Rabbi says arusa. There's an extra word in the pasuk that tells me that even if the woman was only betrothed to the husband that passed away, you still have a mitzvah of Yibam. Okay. Tanu Rabbanan. Taught in the Brisa, Kohen Gadol makar v'einin ve'ina eichel. Kohen Gadol is allowed to do the service even if a close relative passed away. We're getting into this because his wife, we're referring to that his wife was passing away. How was he allowed to do the avodah? So we say the first opinion here says that he's still allowed to do the avodah even though he's an einin. However, he's not allowed to eat from any of the sacrifices. Rabbi Yehuda Omer kol hayayim. Rabbi Yehuda says the whole day. Now we don't know what Rabbi Yehuda is referring to when he says the whole day. My kol hayayim. What does he mean the whole day? He just made a comment, but he doesn't have any verb that goes along with that.
Is he saying instead of morning for like whatever it is, like 7 days instead of minutes, just more than 1 day?
Let's see. Amar Rava. Rava says, "Leinitzcha la'avia mitech beisei." When he says 1 day, he means that I take him out of his house and I bring him to the Beis Hamikdash to do the service on that day. Because we don't want him to get caught up in the morning, because Kohen Gadol is not supposed to be involved in that sort of mourning. So we take it, even if he's not in the Beis Hamikdash, we bring him to the Beis Hamikdash on that day. That's what Rabbi Yehuda means. Amalei Abaya. Abaya says, 1 second. That's what Rabbi Yehuda is saying when it says Kol Hayayim, that you bring him to the Beis Hamikdash. It's 1 second. And you make him do the Avodah. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you take him out of the Beis Hamikdash. The Tanya was taught in a Brisa. If someone is in the middle of the service, he's standing on the Mizbeach, and he hears that a relative passed away, he has to leave the Beis Hamikdash. Taisvus learns that we're dealing with a Kohen Gadol, one of the 7. That a Kohen Gadol that's doing the service, you have to take him out. That's the Rabbi Yehuda. Rashi learns that the Brisa is not talking about a Kohen Gadol, it's talking about a Kohen Hedyot, a regular Kohen. And what Rashi, what he's saying over here is that doesn't really make sense that a Kohen Hedyot, you remove him. In a Kohen Gadol, you bring him. It's like mamish opposites. Whatever the case is, we have a Brisa over here that's alluding to the fact that Rabbi Yehuda would not hold that you bring him from outside.
Yeah, because Rabbi Yehuda said you bring him from outside, he's in the area to question it inside the Beis Hamikdash.
This would be on a regular day. No, it's a regular day. What happens if a Kohen Gadol, it would also apply on Yom Kippur, but even on a regular day, what would happen if the Kohen Gadol is home when a close relative passed away? So Rava was claiming that Rabbi Yehuda holds that you bring him from outside to do the Avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. Rabbi says, 1 second. If he's doing the Avodah, normally you take the Kohen out of the Beis Hamikdash if you hear someone passed away. Now you're telling me you bring him in? Rabbi Yossi says, Yigmar. He says, no. If a person is doing the Avodah, you let him finish the Avodah. Okay. The problem is, Rava tells Abaya, Abaya tells Rava, and now you're claiming that you take him from the house. Elama Rava. The other Rava says, what's the pshat in Rabbi Yehuda? My kol hayayim. What does it mean? Kol hayayim. Rabbi Yehuda says the whole day. Laimar she'ina evet kol hayayim gzeir shemiyaychal. Rabbi Yehuda is actually telling us that I know that a Kohen Gadol doesn't have the prohibition of an einin, someone that's in the first day of mourning to do the avodah, but nevertheless, for rabbinic reasons, we don't have him do the avodah. Maybe he's going to eat from the sacrifice. Amalei Rav Ada bar Abba l'Rava migozer Rabbi Yehuda Shema Yoichal. Does Rabbi Yehuda really say that you have a concern that maybe he's going to eat? But Tanan Rabbi Yehuda Imer Pisha Acheres Maskin Leishema Tamas Ishtoi. The Maisi Ishtoi Avad Aveda V'lei goes Rabbi Yehuda Shema Yoichal. 1 second. Rabbi Yehuda's concerned that his wife is going to pass away and they have to designate another wife. Even if he does have another wife there, the fact is, if a wife passes away, so then he's an eining. And he can't do that according to Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Maybe he's going to eat. And he's not allowed to eat from the, if he's not allowed to eat, we're going to, there's two reasons over here why he can't. One is Yom Kippur, but forget about the Yom Kippur aspect. We're talking about he's not allowed to eat from a sacrifice because an einin is allowed to do the service, but he's still not allowed to eat. Kohen Gadol, that's an einin, he's not allowed to eat from the karbanas. And here we don't say that Rabbi Yehuda is concerned about that. We say just designate another wife and it's all fine. Amalei Hachiashti says 1 second. Hasam kiven the Yom Kippur mu the Kuli Al Malaika Achli Hunami Lo Yasi Lamechal. Over there, it's Yom Kippur. We're not worried that he's going to eat, so we let him do the Avodah. He's not going to eat anyway. No one's eating. There's no other Kayanim there that are eating that he's going to walk by and say, hey, pass me, one of the ribs. He's not going to say that. So, when does Rabbi Yehuda say they have a concern? That's on a regular day where everyone is eating. The concern that the Kohen Gadol, that's an einin, might eat as well, but not on Yom Kippur. So the Gemara says, but 1 second. Why do you have to come on to this answer? He's not an einin anyway. Why? You remember? He ran to Shul while she was on her deathbed, so that she should be divorced.
That's why we
divorced. He doesn't.
She died.
He wasn't. It's not his relative. She was divorced. He doesn't have to mourn for a woman that he divorced. Where it says there's still a problem. I know he's not a einin, but when someone does the avodah, he's supposed to do it with joy, and he's still, even though halachically he's divorced, but it's still gonna feel sad.
He'd be sad even if he's divorced argument.
Yeah, it'll be sad even if it's divorced. Usually, actually, I can't say that. I would take a survey. Someone sent me a sefer. It was a joke, but it was a sefer about saying l'chaim, and it had to do with how to get. Who says l'chaim first? The husband side or the wife side? Like a joke. But anyway, yeah. Okay, let's continue the Mishnah. Kol Shivasi Yamim. All 7 days, the Kohen Gadol, this is the second Mishnah, right? This Kohen Gadol, Huzerek Esadam, Amakdes Akteris, and Metaves Aneris. He sprinkles the blood. He does the service every single day. They really work him hard. He has to do the sprinkling of the blood. He has to bring the Keteris. He has to Metaves Aneris. He cleans out the candle. He offers up the head and the foot, which was the way the sacrifice was divided. That would be the first portion that was put on the mizbeach. But the rest of the year, he's able to do it, but he doesn't have to do it. The Kohen Gadol can take the first portion and he can take the best portion. So, but he's allowed to. Now, during the 7 days, he has to. Montana.
Which 7 days is this referring to?
Referring to the 7 days before Yom Kippur, where he's sequestered. In the Beis Hamikdash, we're doing training now, where he's doing all of the service. He should make sure he's used to it.
So this is the answer to the question I asked, that except for this 7 days before Yom Kippur and Yom Kippur, there are things he normally does, but he doesn't have to be done by the Kohen Gadol.
Right.
This is the only time that it must be done by the Kohen Gadol.
Right.
So the fact that someone else might replace him all those other days, all these other problems don't come into play.
All the other problems. Yeah. There was no problem. All the other days it could be a kayan head. It can do everything.
You know, we say that one of the reasons for being sequestered is because he needs training.
Here we have it.
So the second guy got those also.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Yale's bringing up that what about the second kayan gadol maybe didn't get the training. So, but it seems like we don't have that second concern. We only have the that first concern. And, unless we learn, we had two pshatim before. Maskinin, we had two pshatim. One said maskinin means mafrishin, that they actually separated him as well. Another pshat was no, maskinin was that he's just designated. But not we hope that he's going to have to know.
Opposite of the problem, we say obviously we don't do the second one. Even if we do it with the kind that we don't do it with the second kind of it's like really not valuable, right? But for the kind gadol, you would have experience with the kind gadol, you know he's human. The new kind gadol would have no training at all.
I don't know. It's hard to say. We'll see a little bit about the Gemara on Daf Yud Ches. Going to talk about that. Not always that the Kohen Gadol have any training. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see over there. Amar Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda says, who's the author of this Mishnah? Who says like Rabbi Akiva? Whatever it is, it can't be Rabbi Akiva. This cannot be Rabbi Akiva. We have a secondary problem here that's going to say that it's impossible for the Kohen Gadol to be doing that by the why? Because Rabbi Akiva holds. Di Rabbi Akiva Amar Tar Shenaf L'Lav Hazah Tamatei. We said that all 7 days they will sprinkle on the Kohen Gadol from the Parah Aduma. And it could be that he wasn't really Tameh, right? The Kohen Gadol wasn't really Tameh. They were sprinkling just to be extra careful. Now, there's a rule that if the Kohen Gadol gets, there's a rule that if someone that wasn't Tameh gets the sprinkled on him, the water of the Parah Aduma, it makes him Tameh. Not for 7 days, but it makes him Tameh. So I guess he just goes to the mikveh. So if that's the case, how could Rabbi Akiva, how could he be doing the Avaida? He got sprinkled on him, the Parah Aduma, maybe he was tar, he can't do the Avaida. The Tanya was taught in a brayso, he says, the pure person will sprinkle on the Tameh person, Alatame tar, Valatar Tameh. If he sprinkles on the Tameh, then the impure person becomes pure. But if he sprinkles on a pure person, he becomes Tameh. The Rabbi Akiva. Okay? It's not so. It's telling us when it says Alatame, is that the rules of Hazah only apply to something that's Makabel Tama, not something that's not Makabel Tama. We'll see in a moment what that means. Maihi, what is that talking about? Kidditanana was taught in a Mishnah. There's several versions of this Mishnah, and it affects the way it's learned, but it doesn't matter. For what we need, we'll get the point, however we read it. It says, if someone intends to sprinkle the water on an animal, now an animal, a live animal can never become tamei. Only a Jewish person that's alive is the only thing that's alive that could become tamei. Rabbinically, a non-Jew becomes tamei, but or is considered tamei. But only a Jewish person could become tamei if he comes in contact with something that would make him tamei, a corpse or a sheretz or something. Anyway, here we're talking about came in contact with a corpse. So he needs to have the Parah Aduma. But if the person, the kohen that's sprinkling, intends to sprinkle on an animal, and he sprinkles on the person. So is that considered a sprinkling? So im yesh be'ezev, if there's a little bit more on the hisab, so he can sprinkle again. Yeshana. What is it?
Yishne.
Good. You do it again. Yishne. You do it again. If he intends to sprinkle on a person, his intention was correct. But he's ala behema, but he sprinkled on the animal, that's a problem. So im yesh be'ezeh, if there's still a little bit left, lo yishne, it's disqualified. You can't sprinkle again. So what we're learning here is that Behiza Hatar Alatame is that you have to only sprinkle it on something that could become Tame, which means on a person. Then the water doesn't lose its status. But if you sprinkle it on something that can't become Tame, then the water becomes disqualified. It's as if work was done with the water. There's a Gemara that talks about if work was done with the water, if you did anything, like you use the water as a weight, it invalidates it. You remember that? Yeah, from a kind of.
Yeah.
So my time with the Rabbi Akiva. Let's go back to Rabbi Akiva. What's Rabbi Akiva's opinion? Rabbi Akiva said that the person becomes tamei, that if it gets sprinkled on him, and he didn't need it. Nichlev Rachmana v'hiza tar alav. If the pasuk should say, and he sprinkled on him, my ala tamei. What does it mean? V'hiza tar ala tamei. Shema mina. We learned from that ala tamei tar. Ala tar is tamei. He has to sprinkle it specifically on the tamei. But if you do it on a tar, then the person himself becomes tamei. Okay. Rabbanan. What do the Rabbanan do with that pasuk? Bizatar alatami. We would think it should say bizatar alav. We should sprinkle on him. We could use a pronoun. Why do you have to say alatami? Hi, lidvar makablim tumma dasa. The word tame is coming to tell me that it needs to be something that's makabel tumma. Aval hacha kalvachaymeru. I'm saying no. It's a kalvachaymer. Im alatami tar alatar lekoshkin. If it makes someone that's tame tar, someone that's tar makes him even more tar. What are you saying? Rabbi Akiva, what does Rabbi Akiva respond to that? That sounds logical. Hainu the Kamar Shloima, he says, no, you can't use logic here. Shloima, that was the wisest of all men, said, Amarti achachma v'irachayka mimeni. I said about wisdom that it's distant from me. It means you can't understand, you can't use logic here. This is beyond me. So, yeah, Yitzi also says that. So, okay, V'Rabbanan. That's a pasuk, and that's the Gemara learns from that it's. So what does it mean that they have a kal v'chaymer? Ahu lamazin alav tar v'nagei bem tami. You're right. There is something that's irrational about the water of the paraduma. What is that? That's someone that touches the water becomes tame. But the person that's sprinkling, and the person that it's sprinkled on is always tar. It's just someone that touches it. There's a little bit of a problem here because according to the Rabbanan, the guy that it gets sprinkled on is also touching. But okay, whatever, they ignore that issue. We'll say, the way we'll resolve that once, we'll say that once it gets sprinkled, it gets used, and then it's not considered the water of the paradum anymore. Let's just say it like that. Okay, so, but there is something irrational, and that's someone that touches it. Umaze tar, the one that sprinkles is tar. It says he has to wash his clothing. It's a mamash pasuk. So the person that sprinkles has to wash his clothing, which that's an expression that the person's tummy. My mazeh, what does it mean? Mazeh, the one that sprinkles has to wash his clothing. Negeya doesn't mean someone that sprinkles. It means someone that touches has to wash his clothing. Baksiv mazeh, but it says sprinkle. And what are you like changing the pshat in the pasuk? Baksiv negeya, but it also says someone that touches. Void. Mazeh by kibus begadim negeya lay by kibus begadim. Only someone that sprinkles has to the mazeh by kibus begadim. When it says the sprinkling, it says that he has to wash his clothing. When it comes to the someone that touches, it doesn't say that he has to wash his clothing. Ella my mazeh naise. It doesn't mean just touching; it means carrying. V'nichtav rachmana naise. So let it say carrying. My tamiksiv mazeh. Why does it say sprinkling? Hakamash malan. It's coming to teach us the bin and shir has that when you carry it, you become tamei. But you have to carry the right amount. If you carry less than the right amount, you don't become tamei. This fits with the opinion that says that there is a set amount of sprinkling. But according to the opinion that says that there is no set amount to the sprinkling, so what are you telling me, that you have to carry the right amount to become tamei? So the Gemara says, even according to the one that says sprinkling doesn't have a set amount. Hanimili agaba de gavra. That's only how much needs to go onto the person. But how much water is in the keli? Everyone agrees that you need an amount of sprinkling in the keli. There's a set amount. So if someone carries that amount, he becomes tummy. The Tanana was taught in the Mishnah. How much should be, which will be the amount of the hazah in the keli. That there should be enough that you could dip it in. There should be enough to be able to dip it into it. Abaya says, if you'll take Rabbi Akiva, you can say that our Mishnah is Rabbi Akiva. A very nice teretz Abaya gives us. David Aveda Kuli Yaima. The whole day he does the Aveda. Ulapanya, towards evening, Madu Alav V'Tavel Ba'ovid Erev Shemesh. Towards evening, they sprinkle on him the water of the paraduma. He goes to the mikveh, and then it's nightfall. So the whole issue was an assumption that they were doing it in the morning. They dropped that assumption and everything fits. They did it after he did the Avaida, and they sprinkled on him and he went to the mikveh, and then everything is fine. Let's leave it over here.
Wow.